Good evening, you're watching Estuary News, I'm Hugh Riches. Coming up tonight, we'll have a roundup of the latest news headlines and I'll be reviewing the week's regional papers with my guest, Michelle Lalor. The rate of teenage pregnancies in Hull has continued to hit an all-time low, according to government figures released this week. Figures from the Office of National Statistics show pregnancies in the under-18s at an all-time low since 1969. Overall conception rates have fallen by 63.8% in Hull since the teenage pregnancy strategy began in 1998. Factors such as better relationship and sex education, improved access to contraception through sexual health clinics and improved training for youth workers have helped the reduction. The Royal National Lifeboat Institution is urging people to respect the water if they're visiting the coast over Easter. The charity says one person dies from drowning every day in the UK as people find themselves in the water unexpectedly as a result of slips, trips or falls. Last year, volunteer lifeboat crews launched 171 times off the coast of Yorkshire. Matt McNally of Cleethorpes RNLI says it's important that people be aware of the possible adverse conditions over the Easter weekend.
Yeah, if we get good weather this weekend, we're expecting loads of people into Cleethorpes. Traditionally, Easter's our first busy weekend on the lifeboats as people start to begin the holiday season. And the water's still really cold, so if you're thinking about coming down and you're going to try swimming or paddleboarding's really popular in Cleethorpes at the moment. The first thing to think about is the water temperature, but the other thing is just people never expect to get into trouble. And so actually a little bit of forward planning, just making sure that you're aware of what the dangers are and how to call for help can really help a lot. Last year here at Cleethorpes I think we didn't have any call outs over the whole weekend, but a couple of years ago it was a really nice sunny but windy day on Good Friday morning. By the time it got to 4 o'clock on Good Friday afternoon, the lifeboat had already launched 4 times. The famous thing about British weather is how quickly it changes. So if you've got plans for the weekend, take a look at the wind, take a look at the weather. If it looks like things are getting worse, change your plans and come back another weekend. If we get an offshore wind here at Cleethorpes, then anything to do with kayaking, paddleboarding, anything on the water becomes a lot less safe. Much better when the wind's blowing onshore. Wear a wetsuit definitely if you're planning on going in the water, and have a means of calling for help. A mobile phone in a waterproof bag fastened to you, so if you fall in the water it's not going to get spread apart. Make sure somebody knows where you are, where you're going, and then if you see somebody in trouble, call 999, ask for the Coast Guard and they'll take it from there.
Taxi marshals will work for the first time over the Easter weekend in East Yorkshire. The marshals will be at the ranks in Beverley and Bridlington on Good Friday today and Easter Sunday between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. They'll check that queues are orderly, that people have enough money for their fare and make sure that they're getting into a licensed vehicle. East Riding Council says their licensed vehicles display white oval door stickers and have a top light saying taxi, and all licensed vehicles should have a driver's identity badge prominently displayed. A medieval jousting event will take place at Sowerby Hall and Gardens over the Easter holiday. The Knights of Nottingham will take over the front field and present a performance of jousting and sword fighting at 1 o'clock and 2:30 in the afternoon on Easter Sunday. Other events include an Easter bonnet and Easter egg making session on Saturday and a craft fair in the Orangery on Sunday. A man from Bottisford is to take on his 26th marathon for charity. 76-year-old Jeff Harris, a former lecturer at John Leggett College, will run over 26 miles to mark 26 years of volunteering for Lindsay Lodge Hospice in Scunthorpe. The veteran will embark on a lone 26-mile run circuiting Bottisford Beck Linear Park 4 times in memory of his late son Paul's birthday on the 13th of April. As well as his previous marathons, Jeff completed a 50-kilometre run for his 50th birthday and ran, swam and cycled the distance of the Olympic triathlon for his 70th birthday. Now to have a look through the week's papers with my guest Michelle Lalor of Southbank PR. Welcome, Michelle.
Hello there, Hugh. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good, good.
Now then, what have you got
Shall
first?
we go?
Let's be seasonal and have an Easter story to start with.
We have to start with Easter, don't we? We've got here from the Skegness Standard, I think it is, getting into the Easter spirit at local schools. which just shows you what they do locally at schools to actually have people remember Easter with Easter bonnets and chocolate eggs. Just makes you wonder how many people really do remember the true meaning of Easter.
Yes, there is an old story behind it, isn't there?
There is an old story, and I was saying to you earlier, actually, when we were chatting through this, actually, I was talking to somebody the other day who said they open their Easter eggs on Good Friday.
Well, that's a curiously sad day to be celebrating.
Yeah, and I paused for a second and I thought, well, why do you do that? And she said, well, actually, my mum's very religious, but we still open our Easter eggs on Good Friday, so I'm wondering if I got it wrong all of these years.
Well, if that's a Good Friday, I wouldn't want a bad one.
Okay.
But I was talking to a very senior member of the clergy of the Church of England the other day, and I asked him what's the true meaning of Easter, and he said chocolate.
Oh, okay.
I think he might not have been being frightfully serious.
I think not being frightfully serious, no.
But anyway, yes, there's a significance behind it, but that's no reason not to enjoy all the fripperies
Absolutely
and the chocolates.
Absolutely not, no. And interestingly, I live out in Lincolnshire Wolds in our village, and there's a big hill called Red Hill, and they actually take the crosses up to the top of it every Good Friday.
Oh, really?
They do, yeah, and there's a long flow of people behind them, and they put them up and they have a service in the kind of nature reserve at the top of the hill.
Oh, that's a bit macabre, isn't it? They're putting up the crosses. I know in places like the Philippines they go for the whole sort of reenactment, but that's a bit...
Still do all of that where I live, so there you go.
There we go. Okay, it's a bit much. But Easter is about the sun coming back, isn't it? And so...
Well, hopefully.
Do we have a holiday story?
We have, although I think it's going to be not a very nice Easter weekend.
Well, the forecasters are being a bit gloomy, aren't they?
We've got a story here, actually, that probably wasn't from the Skegness Standard, because I think this one is. Skegness Eye signals start of new era for town and a great summer season. So there's lots of improvements going on in Skegness, and it just made me think of the improvements that's gone on, particularly in Cleethorpes, so if you move up the coast over the last 10 or 15 years, and how people seem to be having these staycations more and more.
Well, the improvements in Cleethorpes are going to get even better because there's not more money that's going to be invested, especially up and down the front and St Peter's Avenue in 2 tranches, I think, coming up in the next few little while this year, I think. The Skegness Eye.
So we have the giant wheel of a new Skegness Eye finally got rolling at the weekend. So we've got it's one of these big, you can see it, I don't know if you can see the big wheels that they have, a bit like the London Eye, although I'm not sure, not quite as impressive as the London Eye, but you never know, do you? But yet another attraction for Skegness, which actually has quite a lot going along the coast actually over the summer, and East Coast has the most, I think, holiday caravan parks of anywhere in the UK.
Well, it's so bracing in Skegness, isn't it?
Exactly. And just actually the amount of money that is being spent now in our holiday areas, so it just shows you, hopefully, good for trade and good for tourism.
I think they've sacked Jolly Jack, haven't they? I think the statue's still there, but they're no longer using the logo.
Trying to haul the resort into the new age, I think.
Have you ever been on the London Eye?
Yes.
It's magnificent.
It is fantastic.
If Skegness can have something like that, then that
brilliant,
would be
wouldn't it? Great. Yes.
Fantastic.
I mean, and you can imagine the view actually.
Well,
out to sea.
Absolutely. I mean, you must be able to see for miles and miles.
It'd be wonderful.
Watch the shipping going by.
Yeah, lovely.
What's this? This is talking again of holidays.
Well, it follows the same trend really, but this is another story in the Scunthorpe Telegraph actually about parents fined almost 1,000 times for unauthorised in-term holidays in North Lincolnshire, which brings this to the fore again, which kind of sits in the amount of money that people have to spend to take holidays in holiday time.
Because all the airlines, if you want to go on a cheap holiday in Spain or Turkey, all the airlines put the prices up massively. Of course they do. Supply and demand. It's perfectly natural for them.
It is perfectly natural, but is that fair? I think, people work really hard. I think it's really important to spend quality time with your children. And actually, if you can't afford to do that, I think they're putting £2,000 or £3,000 often on the price of these holidays, which seems a little bit unfair.
So what's the authority of schools to fine people? I mean, you can't be fined unless other than by due process of law, can you? I mean, how can the schools be fining people?
Well, I think you can, can't you? I think this is now, is it a £60 fine, I think, or you can be taken to court now for taking your children out of school.
So effectively the schools claim to be authorised to hold your child in custody for 6 hours a day, and if it does a breakeout, then that's some sort of criminal offence.
But such a shame, actually, I think, and there needs to be a resolution to this, I think, because you do assume that some holiday firms and maybe airlines are taking advantage of a little bit of the situation.
This is the spurious authority of teachers, I'm afraid. I've noticed it since childhood. Now, here we go. This is a little bit more leisure news, I suppose.
Yeah, this is another kind of Cleethorpesy type story, though, and seasidey story. There's a resort cafe and eatery that's dog-friendly.
Good.
And I do seem to remember somewhere hearing about one that was cat friendly. I'm not sure it was in this area.
There are cat cafes where
Cat
you can
cafes.
go and it's a sort of therapy. That you
Yeah,
can go
exactly.
and stroke a cat and listen to it purring as you have a cup of coffee.
So I guess it's the question is, if you're in a restaurant or a cafe and somebody brought their dogs in, would you be happy with that? I don't know. Some people would, some people wouldn't.
I absolutely would, and I'd like to bring my dogs into cafes and pubs as well, and on the whole, in sort of country pubs, it's almost always welcoming dogs.
Absolutely.
And always, you don't even have to ask, they'll put a bowl of water down as well.
Yeah.
But I think the idea of having pubs or cafes that don't allow dogs is quite uncivilised.
I think so, but the other thing is, I suppose, on the other side of it, you don't want unruly animals in there, do you? And I've been in a restaurant once in a pub, and the people let their dog just run around under the tables when people were eating.
Well, you can say the same thing about children, couldn't you?
I suppose you can, yeah.
I was in
suppose
a pub once, and a bloke just walked into the bar on the end of a piece of string.
I thought you were starting a joke there.
No, it's absolutely true. On the end of a piece of string, he had a wild boar.
No.
And everybody, all the locals, seem to understand it's perfectly normal, and that was.
Are you sure you weren't dreaming?
I'm absolutely
Was
certain,
it
Michelle.
a very fat dog?
I'll tell you about it after the break. Join me after the break, and we'll have a look at a few more of the papers. Welcome back. You're watching Estuary News. Stay with me in the studios. I continue to go through the papers with my guest, Michelle Lalor of Southbank PR, a former editor, of course, of the Grimsby Telegraph.
Thank you.
Michelle. Now, rich history of town cinemas.
Yes, I think this is in the Grimsby paper.
We're all thinking of things to do this weekend, so cinemas might be important.
Especially when the weather's not going to be so good, as we've already said. This presumably comes on the back of the story of the new cinema which is set to be built at the Riverhead.
That's a story which has been
Square.
running since about the year 1201 when King John gave Grimsby a charter.
Probably earlier, yeah. But looks like it's moving ahead. And I know there has been some debate as to whether there is enough cinema goers to satisfy the Parkway, which is a popular cinema in Cleethorpes, and the new one, which is to open in Grimsby. And I suppose opens up the debate of whether people still love going to the cinema these days.
Well, the Parkway's got, 5, 6 screens, hasn't it?
It has, yeah, and also does live shows as well, I think, now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I think people do still love, when you make the effort to go out to the cinema, people still do love it, I think.
It's a special treat.
It is, isn't it?
And also, if you do love film, it is a completely different experience.
Absolutely.
Some sort of frightfully intellectual, talky films, it doesn't make much difference.
No.
But when you've got, you want to see a spaceship, you want it to be spaceship size.
You want to be as big as possible, don't you? And have that surround sound experience as well, don't you? So hopefully that one will get built eventually. And we shall see enough people going there. But this does actually mention some of the cinemas that used to be in the town and what they have become now. So quite an interesting article, actually.
In Grimsby, yeah. Well, there are loads of them in unexpected places. There's a big Odeon that only closed about 10, 15 years ago.
That was on Freeman Street, wasn't it? That is now near the skate park that's there on Freeman Street, isn't it? Yeah. So, hopefully we shall see them return.
OK, well, talking of pictures...
This is your one. You have a story about this one. This is one for you.
This is a picture. This is a Baroque painting by what the Hull Daily Mail suggests is a well-known artist whose name escapes me, Valerio Castello. I know, sorry, Michelle, I've never heard of him. But he's a Baroque artist, so probably sort of late 17th century. And it's the recovery of Tobit of his sight. Tobias healing the blind Tobit. And it's a beautiful sort of Baroque painting. There's a story behind it. It's from the Old Testament. But the painting itself has been bought by the gallery,
right?
Which already has a wonderful sort of Italian and Baroque and Renaissance collection. But it's been bought by the gallery. It had been lent to the gallery in 1973, but it was in such a grubby state that it wasn't ready to be... It wasn't fit for show. Until now, it's been cleaned up. The newspaper, the Hull Daily Mail, doesn't report how much it cost or who it was bought from, but it was on first refusal, and the gallery managed to snaffle it up. So
Good,
anyway,
good.
worth a trip over to the Ferrens to
Yes,
have a look
absolutely.
at a new piece of beautiful old art.
And it's long since been said, actually, in Grimsby, because obviously I know Grimsby a little bit more than the North Bank, about the lack of such a gallery in Grimsby to be able to display some of the artwork that actually is hidden.
Yeah.
There's a number of collections in Grimsby that are hidden away.
Well, really, the only place you can see the sort of public art in Grimsby now is probably the Fishing Heritage
Yes,
Centre.
absolutely, yeah.
There used to be Wellhome
Galleries.
Galleries,
Yes,
yes, on Wellhome
yeah.
Road, which is an old converted church.
Yes.
And that was fascinating. It tended to be a bit fishing-based as well, but there was some beautiful art in there. But
And that is now hidden away, so you never know. We may get something, but in the meantime, there's one over in Hull, so...
let's look forward to Tate Grimsby.
Yeah, that would be good, wouldn't
It
it?
would be fantastic.
Staying
What's
with
this?
Hull,
Ah,
we're staying
yes,
with Hull, and it's
development.
just a story about land in Hull's traditional industrial heart, which could be in line for a multi-million-pound facelift as a high-tech business park. So it looks, and I was in actually Hull the other day, down off Cleveland Street, which is actually quite an industrial rundownish or was area, and you can see the development going along there actually.
Is this along the River Hull? Is it?
Yeah, near the River Hull there,
Yeah.
yeah, and you can see it's starting to change. So it just makes you wonder if this will happen, and Hull will become the Silicon Valley of East Yorkshire.
That would
You
be
never know,
fantastic.
do you?
It's a tech industry. Well, everything's going to become a tech industry, isn't it, eventually?
think it is,
that's,
yeah.
That's all there is to it.
But you need to make the tech,
yeah.
so surely the industry has to be in there somewhere.
But one bit of tech will make the next bit of tech.
It will, yeah.
And then there'll be no people working whatsoever, so there'll be nobody with any money to buy the tech that the tech is making.
So everything comes full circle, doesn't it?
It's
And it'll be interesting to see how it does go.
A dystopian view, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
That area, though, it's having a couple of interesting evolutions, as it were, at the moment. Firstly, all the building up the flood defences
Yes,
is in some parts of the riverbank along the Humber is not very kind to the businesses there. It's stopping their passing trade as the first development. But the second is talking about art, the graffiti
Yes.
industry.
Yes.
It seems to have become a graffiti industry in Hull along there.
Absolutely, yeah, it does. In fact, there's a little bit there. You probably can't see that. I don't know where I'm holding it, but there's a little bit there that shows that.
That's the Banksy image, which I think we're all very familiar with by
Yeah,
now.
and actually, and I hope to come back to Grimsby again, but the underpass at Cartergate, I don't know whether you've walked through there recently.
I walk through it almost every day.
And the art on either side of it, and then the lovely, good graffiti art that's emerging on
Yeah.
the building next to it
Yes.
is very good. So obviously it's a good idea.
And they've put up a few walls, and they've just sort of released for graffiti artists in Hull near the Banksy
Have
thing
they?
as well. Yeah.
Right, so that is fantastic. So hopefully more development in Hull.
Are we coming to a point where we are expecting every building to be graffitied,
Yeah, maybe.
but it has to be good graffiti?
Good graffiti, yeah, and not graffitied on with bad graffiti.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Don't keep the graffiti off the graffiti.
Yeah, exactly.
Now this is a bit of a
Yes,
worrying
now we
story.
move,
We've talked about
actually.
industrial developments in Hull there,
Yeah.
but this is in Grimsby.
This is news that's broken over the last couple of days about the threatened closure of, I think it's 5 Star. I'll put my glasses on, I can't see these days without putting my glasses on. 5 Star Fish, which is a long-standing fish processing company. Possible loss of up to 390 jobs there. But glimmer of hope maybe, it looks like it's the loss of a major contract there that has led to this possible threat. And contracts do switch around.
Of course.
So if the worst happens and this does face that, it may be that another firm within Grimsby has that contract now and is able to take some of those workers on. So I think that's something that may happen.
So it's the company that's lost the contract, but the workforce, as it were, can just shift to the company that's gained the contract.
But however, it won't be 390, will it? When you think of the ancillary staff and the company that it may go to will have staff who could possibly have capacity to take that work on.
Yeah.
So it's a very uncertain future for them. And I know I heard on the radio yesterday that Melanie On, the Great Grimsby MP, was doing all she could to try and persuade a turnaround. However, it is a private business, and there's
Yes.
only so much, however hard-working an MP is and determined, there is only so much they can do to prevent this, isn't there? Or even to
so
hold
much
it.
government should be able to do
Yes,
in a free
exactly.
market.
Yes, you can't. You know, it sometimes is inevitable, and I did hear it been making a loss for a while. So we just hope that something can be done to help the workers.
Yep.
involved in that situation.
You mentioned Melanie on. She and Nick Dakin and Martin Vickers have all been quite vocal about Thames Ambulance recently.
Yes,
as
they
well.
have. Yes, they have.
North Lincolnshire has sacked Thames Ambulance.
Yes.
This is not emergency ambulance
No,
services.
it's for
this
the
is transporting patients.
Yes.
What do you think?
Well, I do know a little bit about that actually, because I was editor over in Scunthorpe, I think, when Thames Ambulance came in. And I think they must have taken over the non-emergency in Scunthorpe before they moved into Grimsby. And at that time, and that would have been 18 months ago now, probably even 2 years ago, there was a trickle of complaints coming in at that time about the service. And I remember that. And now, obviously, that has escalated into them sacking them.
Well, in North Lincolnshire, and possibility of it happening in North East Lincolnshire as well.
And they obviously hadn't got their act in order.
Talking of much faster modes of transport, this is the very sad story of the Red Arrows crash last week, which cost the life of Corporal Jonathan Bayliss. This is from the Market Raisin Mail, and a West Lindsey councillor, Councillor Roger Patterson, has said that quite rightly, I think fairly obviously, the best way to celebrate his life and to continue on is that the Red Arrows should be aloft as quickly as possible and get back up there. I saw the other day that they've gone for their annual training session in Greece. I think they go to...
Yeah, they do go to Greece, I think. They go to Greece, and I think they go to Dubai or somewhere as well, don't they? I think they go to a couple of places out.
If you've got fast jets, you probably go wherever you want.
Yes, probably in seconds,
But they've gone off to Greece for their annual training, which I suspect is rather a rigorous training process.
I can imagine.
But which means that they will be back in our skies over the summer. Sadly, no more Waddington Air Show, though. But
yes, that is a shame, isn't it?
Lots of opportunity to see them.
Yes.
Michelle, thank you very much for a fantastic newspaper review. Have a brilliant Easter break, won't you? Don't eat too much chocolate.
Absolutely. Well, I won't eat it today. I'll eat it till Easter Sunday.
Well, I think that's a bit more traditional. Let's do it that way. Thanks very much, Michelle. If you have a news story for us, then please visit our Facebook or Twitter pages. Email news to estuary.tv. No, estuary@.tv, or it's written down there. You can see it at the bottom of the screen. Or call us on 01472 31553. Write to us at Estuary TV, Nuns Corner, Grimsby, North East Lincolnshire, DN34 5BQ. Have a great Easter weekend. Until Monday. Good evening.